everyone, welcome back to Great Sports Debates. And instead of doing the power rankings we normally do this week, as we get closer to the playoffs, I want to do more of a deep dive into the playoff teams, who's getting in, who's getting out, and how we see it going forward the rest of the way. So let's start off with the AFC side of the picture and move right to the current number one seed, the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are 11-3. That's the good news. The bad news is they have one of the toughest slates going forward. At 49ers, versus Miami, and then versus the Steelers. Now, with Cleveland winning this week, they're not going to be able to wrap up the division. But they remain in the driver's seat for home field advantage. And it'll be interesting to see over these last couple of games if they are the team to beat in the AFC. On that same note, in the number two set is the Miami Dolphins, currently 11-4, and the AFC East leaders. Now, interestingly enough, if the playoffs started today, they would be matched up with the Colts. They finally beat a team with a winning record, beating Dallas probably a little more convincingly than the score would say. And they've officially locked into the playoff field. I think they were over 99% to do so. But they continue to apply pressure on the Ravens. And this was the team that we said had the absolute toughest last three games. So they already got Dallas and they won that. Then they have at the Ravens. And then the Bills game might not even matter at this point, depending on how things play off there. So they win out. They get home field and the bye. So the Dolphins, as well as the Ravens, control their own destiny. In the three spots, the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs have underperformed this year. We've talked about their issues at wide receiver and tackle. They have a 7-2 record in AFC games, and they also have the win over Miami, which gives them a shot to go home field advantage if anybody slips up. But they're probably going to need to run the table. Good news on that, I've been watching their schedule, is it's pretty light. They got the Raiders and Cincy at home, and then have to go on the road to the Chargers, who knows who will even be playing for them at that point. So, side note, this could be the first futures bet I've ever lost. If you remember at the beginning of the year, Kansas City, we picked to win over 11.5, so they're going to have to run the table to do so, and the schedule is at least favorable. In the fourth spot, still clinging to the fourth spot, I should say, is the Jacksonville Jaguars. They've lost 4 in a row, 5 of their last 7, and they just haven't looked good. I thought that they would turn it around against Tampa, and they got smacked. So it's not a good way for the Jags to move into the playoffs. And actually, there's a couple of teams right on their heels that also are dealing with injuries and such. But the Jags need to get it together. And luckily, they have a soft schedule to end. But the way they've been playing, they still might not get it done. They're technically hanging on to first place in their division by retaining the tiebreaker with the 4-1 division record to hold off the Texans. And they swept Indy, who are also 8-7. They have the Panthers and at the Titans. Those are 2 games you want to win if you have any hope of winning a playoff game at all. At 5 right now is the Cleveland Browns. And if Jacksonville was the matchup like today, I would have to think Cleveland's the favorite even on the road. They've won 3 in a row now, maintaining a slim cushion to separate them from the rest of the AFC wildcard fray. They can secure their playoff berth by beating the Jets at home on Thursday night And then they'll have the Bengals, who might not be playing for anything at that point, and they're filled with injuries as well. You know, Joe Flacco, not amazing, has a strong arm and makes a huge difference on this team that clearly has the top defense in the league. All right, in the 6th seed are the Buffalo Bills. They're 9-6. They're the number 2 wild card. And despite all of their, inconsistencies from looking like the best team in the league to a turnover machine, they survived Saturday night to jump back into the playoff field, but they didn't look impressive doing it. The division crown technically remains a possibility if the Bills can win their last 2 games and hope Miami loses to Baltimore. Either way, they got to win out, and Buffalo will be in the playoffs. So they control their own destiny. They got the Patriots, who they should beat, but they've been giving teams all they want lately. And then they have the Dolphins, who they already beat earlier in the year, but this time it'll be in Miami. It'll be interesting to see how they finish the season. Remember, at one point you could have got them for 40-1 to win the Super Bowl. And then rounding up the AFC, we got the Indianapolis Colts. They're also they're 8-7, tied with a bunch of teams that are 8-7 right now. And despite getting beat Sunday, they got the Raiders, and then they have the Texans, who knows if CJ Stroud's coming back. They got a ton of other injuries. Colts have everything lined up for them to sneak in, but they got a lot of competition. Other teams that are in the hunt, we got the Houston Texans. They've fallen off a little bit lately. They're missing a lot of teams. They lost again. The interesting part for the Texans, though, is they have the Colts, who are ahead of them. They got the Titans, and then they're at the Colts. So if they can beat Indy, if they win out, I think that they get in. At 9's the Steelers. You guys can just stop already. You were all on me about them being lucky or not playing so good and just pointing to the record. And, well, now their record's exactly where I said they were going to be, a 500 club. They're 8-7. They're not in the playoff field right now. Luckily for them, Mason Rudolph has looked better than their other quarterback options that they've had so far. And they did just complete a season sweep of Cincinnati. Still, the head-to-head loss against Houston and Indianapolis are among their problems. So I don't really see a way that they get in. Plus, they got a little bit of tough sledding at Seattle and then finishing at Baltimore. Unless Baltimore has the number 1 seed wrapped up somehow, I'm assuming they're playing to win that game. The Cincinnati Bengals have crashed back to earth, and they are 0-5 in the division. I can't think of a team ever being 8-7 that was 0-5 in their division. And they're 3-7 in the conference, so I don't know that they're really in the hunt, but I know they're technically not out yet. They also got at the Chiefs and versus the Browns, so I think they're in trouble. I think Cincinnati's not getting in this year. And then we'll just throw the Denver Broncos in there. They're 7-7. They're struggling with the New England Patriots right now. And then they're coming off getting beat down by Detroit after having a little bit of a hot streak. Denver's got to remember what got them to their hot little run. It was being physical and running the ball and, almost using Russell Wilson as a trick play. Kind of like when they were the best that they were in Seattle. They still got to finish up their game against the Patriots. And if they can't beat them, they don't deserve to be in. And then they got the Chargers and Raiders, but they're going to need help either way. All right. As far as the rest of the AFC, they're either eliminated or they're basically eliminated. Moving on to the NFC style, the team that's been top of our power rankings almost every single week, the San Francisco 49ers. They're 11-3. They've already clinched the NFC West champions. They were the first team to clinch the playoffs, doing so in week 14, I believe. And they got wins in hand against Philly and Dallas, who are like really the two of the other top teams in that conference. So those guys aren't going to catch them, and they beat them handily, which is good to know for betting on the playoffs in the future as well. The Niners continue to march towards home field advantage. They're not going to be able to sew it up if beating Baltimore this week based on Detroit's victory. They have a favorable schedule. Have the Ravens, which should be a tough one, at Washington, which should be automatic, and then a very interesting one against the red-hot Rams. In the 2 seed is the Detroit Lions. They're 11-4. They clinched the NFC North when they beat Minnesota today. And it's their first division championship in 30 years. It wasn't even the NFC North back then. So they have at the Cowboys, who've lost a couple in a row, and then versus the Vikings. So I'm thinking in that matchup, which is going to be very pivotal in how the NFC playoff picture plays out, the Lions should be able to run on Dallas. That was kind of their Achilles heel when they got smoked by both Arizona and Buffalo. But on the other side, I don't think Detroit's going to do very well stopping them. So I'll be looking for an over on that game. In the 3 spot, we got the Eagles, and they're guaranteed an opportunity to defend their conference crown based on their early start, and they still control their destiny because, well, at least as far as the NFC East, because they got 2 games against the Giants. So those will be the 2 biggest games because that's going to give them the division record tiebreaker. So Philly's 10-4. They haven't looked great recently. I still think they got some good players. Unfortunately, a little bit older on both the offensive and defensive line. So this is a team built to play playoff football. You know, they're not the favorites, but there's not a team that I don't think that they couldn't beat when they're playing right. All right, the 4 seed is the Tampa Bay Bucks. They were impressive today. It's a 4th win in a row. Plus, with New Orleans losing on Thursday, the Bucks are in a pretty good position to win their division. I think that, they're likely to lose whoever they play in the 5 seed spot, whether that turns out to be most likely Philly or Dallas. But they have the Saints and Panthers, so Tampa Bay should win out there. And I think if they beat the Saints, that locks up the division for them. In the 5 spot is the Cowboys. They've lost 2 in a row, both on the road. Some reason, this team plays much better at home than they do on the road. I know everyone plays a little bit better at home in general, but it seems a little extreme in this case. Just look at the numbers on that. And that's one of the good things that they have going for them is their big matchup in Detroit is at Dallas, and then their last game's at the Commanders, who, who knows if they're even playing starters at that point. They might be trying players out. But Dallas might have lost their chance to win the division, but they're in the playoffs either way. And if they're in the 5 spot, it's really not going to be that bad. They might actually have the easiest matchup taking on the NFC South winner. At 6 is the Rams. This team's hot. It's going to be really interesting. Currently, they're set up to play at Philadelphia if the playoffs were to start today. They have at the Giants, which you would think would be a win, and then at 49ers, where maybe the 49ers have the 1 seed locked up and they're playing backup. So the Rams could go on a run. I don't think that there's any scenario where they catch Dallas in the 5 seed. So 6 spots probably as high as they go. I think they're probably pretty locked in right there. But in the 7th spot is the Seahawks, and they have a very light schedule. So if the Rams don't take care of business, they could get leapfrogged. They pulled out wins, despite, you know, some people would say being outplayed or coming on late or however you want to say it. They are 8-7 at this point, and they just got versus the Steelers and at the Cardinals. 2 very winnable games. So I think if Seattle's able to take care of business, they should finish off in the playoffs. Okay, the rest of these teams are going to need a little bit of help. These are the teams that are in the hunt. We got at 8, the Minnesota Vikings. They've had turnover problems all year, and the game against Detroit was no different. They have wins over Atlanta and the Saints and the Packers, which would help for tiebreaker purposes, but they're going to need to somehow leap ahead of Seattle or the Rams to get in as a wild card. They got versus the Packers and at Lions left. Again, we don't know if Detroit's going to be playing for anything at that point. And Minnesota's, like I said, is going to need help at this point. Okay, the Atlanta Falcons, despite being at 7-8, are in a little bit of a better situation because they can still win the worst division in football. They have got a big win Sunday over Indianapolis. They got previous wins over the Saints and Green Bay. And they finish up at Bears and at Saints. So if they take care of business there, you know, again, they'll still need help, but they're only 1 game out in the division. In the 10th spot currently is the Green Bay Packers. They beat the Panthers, not very convincingly though. I think they're in trouble and they're out of it. They got at the Vikings and versus Bears. I don't think they're going to win both of those games, and even if they did, they still need help anyhow. And then the last team we're going to mention on the NFC side is the New Orleans Saints. They lost control of their postseason path when they lost Thursday night, and they have a chance to get back on track playing at Tampa Bay and then finishing versus Atlanta. Even if they win out, they could still be in trouble. So, scenarios for Week 16. If Kansas City winds up winning tomorrow, or, you know, if Denver can't finish off New England and Kansas City ties, they'll clinch the AFC West, which was one of the division winners we gave you at the beginning of the year. So, hopefully that one pays off for you. So, that wraps up what I got for the current playoff picture as of Christmas Eve. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Who we missed, who could rise, who could fall. And maybe we can even start talking about who you like as upsets or who do you think is going to be undervalued in some of the matchups as they are now. Thanks for watching, and like and subscribe if you appreciate what we're doing. Thanks a lot.